It is time for the third Saturday in October, your SEC Tailgate podcast for the rest of us. We just wrapped SEC Media Days, so we're coming to you with the first episode for the 2021 season. Before we get started, I got to tell you, go to thirdsaturdayin.october.com. Look, tailgating's going to be back this year, I guess. I mean, we can see each other now. So what better way to get started than going to thirdsaturdayin.october.com and downloading our top 10 tips for tailgating. You can find it there. You can also find links to all of our social media, find a link to our YouTube channel where we broadcast the podcast. Back with you, I am Tennessee Bradley. I am here with Alabama Chris. Alabama Chris, can you smell it? It's the smell of fresh cut grass. It's the smell of sweaty locker rooms, and it is the smell of SEC football.
SEC football. We can finally talk about it again after our hibernation. Yes, we do go into a cave for about half of the year, only to come out ravenous for food and SEC football. So it is nice to be out of the cave, to look around again, and to, like, again, there are certain little flag posts that I look for in the season. In the spring, it's like when the flowers start to bloom. In the summer, it's like when that humidity here in the South really starts to kick in. But for me, the official starting point of my favorite time of year starts around SEC Media Days that often happen in Hoover, Alabama, which, again, they've happened there this year. I think I like it being back in my home state of Alabama. But, man, this, for me, and for us really here at TSIO, is really the launching point into the college football season. So I could not be more excited, even though outside it's 90-something degrees and the humidity is full force today. It feels a little like fall in my heart because we are about 6 weeks away from kickoff for the SEC.
Well, I'm not sure who's more giddy about this, myself or Josh Heupel. He was giddy as a schoolgirl. So am I. We're going to get into some SEC expansion rumors. We're going to break down a little bit of what each coach said about their team at SEC Media Days, and even look at some of the comments that Greg Sankey, commissioner of the SEC, said as well. So let's just jump right in to the beginning of the 2021 season.
Do it.
So, Chris, rumor broke during SEC Media Days, and you mentioned that it may have been, we haven't looked into this a whole lot. It may have been right as ACC Media Days. I didn't even know they had such a thing started. Maybe to steal some spotlight. Rumor broke that Texas and Oklahoma want to join the SEC. Chris, what do you think?
Okay, so I think that you and I are smart individuals, right? Okay, so we decided to do an SEC related podcast a few years ago, and it makes sense. That's a lot of what you and I talk about day in, day out basis. We talk many things from Disney to guitar to our favorite musicians. But the thing that probably hypes us up the most, and probably what we built our friendship on the most, is SEC football, and specifically SEC football, because my favorite team being Alabama, yours being the Tennessee Vols. It's like we had a love of football, even though we didn't have a love of the same team. And so you and I really got passionate about a decade ago of following SEC, talking to it, not just about our favorite teams, but about the SEC in general. And I think that we were, ahead of the curve when people like Oklahoma and Texas wake up and go, you know what, maybe we should join the bandwagon that Tennessee Bradley and Alabama Chris did several years ago and just become SEC folks as well. So I think that we started this trend.
We can take credit for that. Yeah.
I want to take credit for it, but I am pumped because, okay, so I have some pros and cons about it. And I don't know what this will mean for football, for life. Like, again, somebody said a couple of days ago, I was listening, and they were like, this is not a decision for this season. This is not a decision for even in the next couple of seasons if the playoffs start to expand. This is a 40-year plus decision of moving to a different conference. And so it is an honor that we feel like the pretty girls at the dance, that people want to come hang out with us in SEC world. And again, I'm talking.
I've never been a pretty girl, just for the record.
Well, I tell you what, though, you put that orange and white on and you walk on to the dance floor, some people are going to want to dance with Tennessee Bradley. I'm just saying.
Well, I am excited about the potential of the UT showdown, orange versus whatever that crap color is that they call orange in Texas. It's the color of the clay dirt on the ground in Texas. It's very interesting though.
Yes, Seth Meyers' late night TV show used to do this segment again called "You Burnt," where they talk about a hot topic and then they burn it. I was like, this is not a good topic. They burn it. And knowing that the Tennessee Vols have that beautiful orange and Texas Longhorns have a burnt orange, I think we should just call them "You Burnt."
Yep.
You burnt orange.
You burnt you. It's trademark it. There will be shirts in the future. You burnt you. So I like to hate on Texas.
Who doesn't?
I mean, right now, not competitive.
No.
Here's the thing. When they signed that deal for the Longhorn Network, they pretty much killed the Big 12. That's when A&M, Missouri decided to leave, join the SEC. It's when Nebraska, like, I'm out. Who else left? Colorado? Were they in the Big 12 and left?
I think you're right. Yeah.
So these teams start leaving because everything was moving towards the Pac-12 network, the SEC network, the ACC network, Big 10 network. And what does the Big 12 do? Texas goes and signs an exclusive deal, basically killing the chance of any Big 12 network. So Texas, the Big 12 is not the most desirable conference, even though they've produced Oklahoma, who's been in several, most of the playoffs since that was created. It's really just been Oklahoma. Baylor kind of fell off right as the playoffs were getting started, but the Big 12 fell apart because of Texas. So now Texas wanting to leave the Big 12 because it's not a good conference anymore. Texas, you did this to yourselves.
Wow. Yeah.
But I did see a headline from Barrett Sallee over at Bleacher Report that Texas would scrap the Longhorn Network to join the SEC, which, I mean, I don't know who the sources are. I don't know who's saying this, but that's big. Because
that's huge. And Barrett, he's legit. I followed him and appreciated his articles, even when they've been pro or con on the Bama side. I just think Barrett Sallee is a good reporter, and so I trust his words if he's putting it on the blog or on the post or wherever he's putting it. But that seems wild that they would scrap the Longhorn Network, knowing the lucrative deals that they must have through that. So to scrap that to come to the SEC, that is an even larger endorsement for the brand that the SEC has built over the last several years.
And what I like is people are already just dreaming. What would the East-West divisions look like? And I have to agree with a lot of people who are saying put Texas and Oklahoma in the West, move Missouri to the West, and move the two Alabama schools, Alabama and Auburn, to the East. As a Tennessee fan, I love it and I hate it. The East gets much stronger because now you've got Alabama, who is king of the SEC right now. You've got Georgia. You've got Florida. Auburn is also pretty stiff competition most years. Some years they're world beaters. Other years they can lay eggs. I'm not saying that as as a bad thing about Auburn, because Tennessee just lays eggs these days. But that makes the East a lot stronger. Does it weaken the West? I don't think so, because you're getting Oklahoma. Also, Missouri is no one to sleep on. either. They've been known to beat some really good teams, bringing in their high-powered offense. They kind of started the high-powered offense in the SEC. So, plus Texas, I think Texas will be a pretty good middle of the road. Like Texas A&M, come in, surprise some people in some games, but then not be able to keep up in some of those others, like a game with Oklahoma. You keep the Red River rivalry for Texas and Oklahoma. You keep the Alabama Auburn Iron Bowl. You keep the third Saturday in October. You get back the Tennessee Auburn rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm loving this. I think it works. It makes sense. I love to hate Texas. Give me one more team to hate. That's fine. It will be interesting to see where Alabama is and where Oklahoma is when this, if this all happens, because if they're meeting in the SEC championship game, talk about one heck of a conference championship.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I've been against growing the SEC. I wasn't a huge fan when Texas A&M and Missouri joined, but at this point, come on, show us what you got.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I felt that when Texas A&M and Missouri came in, that I was a little unsure as to the dynamic, the reasoning, other than the fact of, expanding out our conference from a 12-team conference to a 14-team conference. Seems beneficial just to have more people in there. But now to potentially be a 16-team conference, that's a lot. That's a lot to handle. I know that you and I were discussing earlier, like in a realignment that would happen if every one of the big time Power 5 conferences went to an 16-team conference.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe, if I'm remembering it correctly, what does that put in? 80 teams, something to that effect?
80 teams in the Power 5 conferences, which is a lot of teams. What's interesting is you'd have to play, by the way that the SEC runs their schedule, you have to play everybody in your division. So that's at least 8 conference games. Do you continue with 2 cross-divisional rivals, which means you're playing 10 conference games? Some other conferences play 9 or 10 games. Currently, the SEC only plays 8. I'm sorry. If there's 8 in each conference, or division, it means you play 7. But would you make it 8? Would you make it 9? Would you make it 10? A lot of other conferences play 9 or 10 conference games. It'd be interesting to see what it does to the schedule.
Yeah.
Last year, some people were saying, look what it did to the SEC. We really beat up on each other. Some teams that were better than their record showed had worse records because they're playing the SEC. I don't know. Who cares? Give me SEC football. Even if Tennessee's awful, I'll still watch it.
You know what? I want to mention something about that, because you mentioned you bagged on Auburn a minute ago.
Yeah.
And then you're like, just to let everybody know, we're not necessarily just bagging on Auburn right here. And then you bagged on your favorite team. And I want to say that I think that we are here at Third Saturday in October. We are biased, but we are fair in our assessment. If
maybe you are. I am okay with being completely unfair. It's going to get unfair in a few minutes when we get to the media days. But yeah, you know what? I am pro Tennessee. I'm going to speak as a Tennessee fan, which means there are certain teams that I'm just going to dog. Whether they beat us or not, I'm still going to talk bad about them.
But you know what? And it's hard because I want to be that fair but biased kind of podcast here. But it is easy to say that when coming off a national championship and having Nick Saban at the helm of everything that my team, the successes that we've experienced over the last decade plus.
It's humble brag.
It's a privileged position to be at. But we tried to be as much as possible. fair, even if part of being fair is bagging on our own teams. But I will say this, just going back quickly with Oklahoma and Texas, like how cool would it be to know that, like, again, used to, when I used to think of Texas A&M, I like Texas A&M. Paul Bryant, or Bear Bryant, who coached at Alabama, was at Texas A&M and then came to Alabama as well as Kentucky. But I have loved Texas A&M. They were kind of like my Texas team because there were some deep Alabama roots with Bear Bryant.
Okay,
but now
quick Alabama trivia. Who else coached at both Alabama and Texas A&M?
Gene Stallings.
You got it.
Woohoo! Take that, haters. No. But I'm pumped to have essentially, again, Baylor, Texas Tech. I don't want to throw shade on any of those guys, but like when I think of Texas college football, in my mind, it was Texas A&M and Texas growing up.
Yeah.
And again, I know that you actually went to Baylor, and so RG3 and you brought Baylor to my attention, and then Chip and Joanna Gaines through all the stuff that they do. But before that, I didn't even really know Baylor or Waco.
Who wants to go to Waco? There's a cool barbecue place called VTEX. You can get a gut pack.
Get a gut pack, baby. They're delicious.
The best barbecue can be found at a gas station. But other than that, there's not a lot in Waco. We didn't want to venture too far off campus. I did hear gunshots on a couple of occasions from my apartment. Just not a place you want to go vacation. But now people go see, what is it, Magnolia Farm?
Yeah, go to the silos.
Silos, yeah.
Exactly.
Whatever. So
yeah, but I mean, so other than Baylor, which I now have a lot of respect for over the last decade or so, up until that point, it was Texas and Texas A&M. Yeah. And so to now potentially have both of those in the fold of the SEC sound amazing. And I just wanted to mention this as well. If you did move Alabama and Auburn to the east, and then moved Missouri back to the west, where they probably should have been had they not been coming into the SEC with another far west team in Texas A&M, they should have been in the West the whole time. Yeah. It's kind of like West Virginia being in the Big Ten. Yeah.
And you know what I thought about? Auburn, Georgia. That game now in the East. You get Alabama, Georgia every year. It could work for a lot of reasons, even just for the SEC rivalries. The question was asked of Greg Sankey, not when he presented at the SEC Media Days, but after, because the announcement, the rumor started after the SEC Media Day started. And his comment was no comment. But that didn't stop a couple of the coaches from saying something about it or getting asked questions.
True.
But Chris, let's jump into the SEC Media Days, and let's start with Greg Sankey. Couple things that I heard him say that I thought were very intriguing was just speaking about COVID protocols and all that. And he said, we have learned how to manage through a COVID environment, but we do not yet have control of the COVID environment. Just talking about it's, we still can't control the disease like we'd like, but we do know how to pivot, make changes where necessary. That was very interesting. He did mention that there's not going to be the schedule buffers. So it sounds like if you can't field enough players, you just have to forfeit the game, which will be interesting to see how that works out in the season. The other thing that I thought was very interesting is he said some things, I wouldn't call them bold, but saying them out loud at something like the SEC Media Days. He was calling out the NCAA for decisions on infractions. He wants them to happen in a timely manner. We've got some big decisions that are now 5 or 6 years removed from when they happened, when the investigation started, and we still don't have a decision. And he said, to be fair to the schools that committed the infractions, and to be fair to every school that plays them, you got to make decisions in a more timely manner. So just interesting that Greg Sankey is calling out the NCAA just a little bit.
Yeah, I think that is because Greg Sankey knows who he is within the organization, that he knows very well as well. He knows that he's the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, and in college football, that name is probably it probably carries more weight than most names in college football, just because of the position that he is within the SEC. So I think that he can say something like that, and that not only will the NCAA pay attention, but something may actually be done about it. And I agree with him as far as the penalties and the things that come down as far with investigations. Some of the times the people, especially the student athletes, they get hurt the most through these things. They some of them may have not even been in high school when the person in college made the decision that ultimately allowed them to have to suffer or sit out a bowl game or to not have as many players on the roster, whatever the punishment need or has to be that are decided. Most of the people that make those decisions, whether it's coaches or players, are gone by the time that things come up. And so that's difficult. And I don't think that, like, again, so one of the coaches that I was listening to over media days was talking about that every year the team is new. I think it was Ed Orgeron was talking about the difference between their 2019 team and the team that they had last year, and how you have to look every year. This is a brand new team. Yeah. And so it's not fair to me to punish a team that is not the team that created the issue in the first place. So it's difficult, but I agree with them. And then as far as the COVID stuff, I love that there's not going to be any buffer games. I hope that doesn't come back to haunt Alabama. But I'm glad that that's not going to be a thing, which is essentially Greg Sankey and the whole of the SEC saying, teams, get your team, your players, your coaches, your faculty in line before the season starts, or you will be punished if somebody comes down with something. And I get it. I think that knowing who coaches are and how they are always looking for a competitive advantage, even if it's on a microscopic level, that everybody was scrambling last year to figure out what to do. This year is when coaches would have taken an idea of, oh, could my team sit out and then play this team later on in a rescheduled game versus having to play them right now when our quarterback is hurt or we've got a wide receiver and a running back that are down or whatever it may be, that like they would figure out the competitive advantage of strategically getting COVID at the right time. We joked about it on here quite a bit last year, but this is when you have a whole year to figure out how to make that within the bounds of the rules. If the SEC would have gone forward with some delayed games, and then how to manipulate that for maximum effect. So I'm glad that that is now out, because that it just encourages everybody to be on the same page and for you to take care of your own, or things to come back to haunt you.
Yeah. So very good hearing from Greg Sankey. Liked what he had to say.
Yeah. For the most part, I feel like we're in very good hands with our commissioner and Greg Sankey.
I mean, if the way he runs things, the way the SEC has been run for a long time. You know, when we interviewed Austin Huff last year from Corked Bats, he said one of the things that he loved being a Missouri grad as Missouri moved into the SEC is it's a conference to which all the other conferences look for how it's run. And he was excited to be in a conference that is run so well, and not just for football, but for all sports. And, you know, obviously Texas and Oklahoma are ready to drink the Kool-Aid too. But let's now shift into the divisions, into individual teams. We'll start with the East. I'm just going to go with these in alphabetical order because nerd alert, I am a nerd. I like things in order. So tee it up for Dan Mullen. I'm ready to go. I don't know. I just don't trust the guy in press conferences. Couple things he said. Somebody said, you know, what was it about your defense that made it seem like they never figured it out? They never figured things out. He's like, I don't think we never figured things out. I just call it erratic. I'm like, that sounds like just the same thing, but saying a different word.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like to call them synonyms. It's, never figuring it out. Erratic.
Oh, no.
Not
This
quite
is
synonyms, but I don't know.
this is coach speak, man. This is we're gonna say it here first. You take a synonym, you spin it, which becomes a spinonym. That's
Spinning
classic.
Yes.
You learn that on day one of Coach Speak University. You got to figure out your synonyms so that you are saying only what you want to say and nothing that you're not. All the while saying everything without ever saying anything.
Yeah. So when I heard that, I was like, Dan Mullen, you have got to stop day drinking. He, he, he mentioned that he'd like to do away with permanent cross division rivalries, which, as it stands now, would mean no more third Saturday in October, no more Auburn, Georgia, couple others. But it was like, oh, that's interesting. But if the SEC adds Texas and Oklahoma, realigns like we all hope they would, I think that takes care of most of those rivalries. We did look at it. The way that we talked about it earlier with the realignment, the SEC East would be most of the original Southeastern Conference schools that are still in the Southeastern Conference. Sewanee, Tulane, there's one more that has Georgia Tech have left.
Tech. Yeah.
But LSU is left over there, and both Mississippi schools.
The Mississippi schools.
Yeah. Ole Miss and Mississippi State were both part of the original SEC, but most of the original schools are over in the East. That'd be interesting. He proposed moving to 9 conference games, 4 home, 4 away, 1 neutral site, so that you don't get into a thing with more home games, more away games kind of deal. That seems like a stretch to be able to navigate a neutral site game for every team. 7 neutral site locations. That's going to be tough.
Yeah.
So then somebody asked, how do you battle Alabama recruiting in the state of Florida? Because Alabama's getting all these top Florida players. And he said, I rate players a little differently. Well, I'm sorry, Coach Mullen. Your rating system doesn't seem to work, because when it's been a while since you've beaten Nick Saban at his own game. So I don't know. That's my hating on Dan Mullen, not saying the smartest of things, if you ask me.
Let me say this. I think Dan Mullen, just quickly, of all 14 coaches in the SEC, is it even arguable? Is it even a hot take or a debatable thing at this point to say that he's the most easily offended or sensitive or hot-headed of the coaches, at least verbally? He'll say something that's like, I can't believe that a human said that, much less a coach at a football, a big program like Florida. But he just seems like the most easily offended of all of the coaches, even if it's just what they say out of their mouth. Who knows what's going on at home or in their heads, but he lets things fly, where I think that a lot of other coaches try to say the right thing, even if they think something completely different.
Well, he's also got this look of what the heck is going on his face most of the time when he's coaching. And a lot of times,
I know this face so much. Yeah.
A lot of times in press conferences too. So just, he's an easy coach to hate. There was another Florida coach who was easy to hate, Coach Spurrier, but he had swagger. He probably invented swagger. I think he did invent trash talk. He was the best trash talking coach maybe I've ever seen. Dan Mullen just isn't that. For better or for worse. But moving on to Georgia, Kirby Smart. he gets my filibuster award for the East. He talked for 15 minutes before taking questions.
Wow.
He was the only one who really talked about vaccination rates, said that 85% of his team, which I believe includes staff, are vaccinated, and that number is growing. He wants to keep people safe and save their season. He's like, I don't want any excuses. He also mentioned that the name, image, likeness rule now in effect, he hasn't seen it pose a competitive advantage between SEC schools because the SEC has kind of they've all decided together to kind of have the same rules. But not sure how that's going to work nationally until a decision is made at the national level, whether that's in Congress or through the NCAA. So that just a couple interesting things that Coach Smart said there. Then at Kentucky, Mark Stoops, he still wants to build and develop, meaning recruit high school players, get them in the system, get them used to his system, and develop them that way. But he did say that the transfer portal has changed things because you can rent a player for a year, basically. But we also know it's hard at the college level to come in, learn a new system, because systems are so different in college. You learn a new system. You don't have a lot of time to do it because you're also supposed to be in class, studying, doing other things. So he just kind of pushed on the fact that he likes recruiting high school players to come to Kentucky from the beginning and stay there for their entire collegiate career. He also said the hiring of his new offensive coordinator, who I believe, did he come from the Panthers maybe? Was in large part to improve the passing game.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So Kentucky for a long time has been a run first team. He wants to develop that passing game. Thought that was very interesting. It seems to be the way that offenses are going. Elijah Drinkwitz at Missouri. He gets my funniest of the East award. He starts off with the question. I mean, this is how he started his speech, his prepared comments. Will the horns down be a 15-yard penalty in the SEC? This may have been the first time that we talked about the rumors. Who knows? He also joked about Connor Bazelak, who won Freshman of the Year last year. He said, can he win 2 years in a row with COVID rules? Last year didn't count towards eligibility. So is he still a freshman? Can he win Freshman of the Year again?
I like it. Good argument.
He also said, somebody was asking him about how does social media affect you or something. He's like, Twitter is not real, just so we're all on the same page.
Say Lane Kiffin would argue that is false.
Right.
Because he lives on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Lane Kiffin's Twitter is the Twitter prowess of the state of Mississippi is just on point. I can't wait for another season of that. He also says everybody wants to play in the SEC in response to what he thinks about the Texas rumors. And when somebody asked what advice did he get from Gus Malzahn, he said, don't pick a fight with Kirk Herbstreit. I think that's just sound advice.
That is good advice. Yeah.
So Elijah Drinkwitz gets my funniest of the East award. Then we go to Shane Beamer. Not a whole lot to say here, other than he leaned really hard on the fact that he's got a dad who, I don't know if he's in the Hall of Fame, but should be in the Hall of Fame. Legendary coach. I don't know how many times he said, my dad did this. My dad, if it was a drinking game, we wouldn't make it into the stadium after that tailgate. Next, we move to my coach Josh Heupel. one of three new coaches. Shane Beamers is new to the league as well. Let me tell you, from the very get-go, Josh Heupel, giddy as a schoolgirl. I mentioned it earlier. You could just tell from his energy, he's excited to be here. I wasn't sure when we first hired him. I don't know if I saw his introductory press conference, but seeing him here at media days, he's excited. He's ready to go. He mentioned that the last three national champions put up over 500 yards per game in offense.
Wow.
He mentioned that they're going to be taking a little bit of a new age approach. He hinted that there could be new uniforms. Does that mean the gray, smoky gray uniforms when they run on the field? I love those smoky grays. Last year there was talk before the season got all disjointed about a special uniform to promote racial equality, and that uniform never happened. They were going to be auctioned off after the game. But that with now I'm even forgetting Pruitt's name, but it's Coach Pruitt. With Coach Pruitt, it was very traditional, orange and white. I'm trying to put him out of my mind. So I love the smoky grays. Hope those come back. And then Clark Lee at Vandy, sharpest dresser of the East. Really awesome suit, white suit with or I guess kind of an off-white suit with I don't know what it's not stripes, but they're lines making squares all over the place, but it's not plaid. I don't know. Really nice suit. He did say, I didn't come to Vandy to do anything other than win. I'm not sure you go to Vandy to win, Coach Lee, but he also won the driest coach of the East. Man, it was a struggle to stay involved in that conversation. But that is my rundown of the East at SEC Media Days. Very fun getting to see what all these coaches had to say. Also, we'll get into what some of the players said a little later. We'll get into that. But Chris, I'm going to throw it over to you for the West. Tell me about the West at SEC Media Days.
Yeah, and as I'm diving in here, I just want to agree with you. I think with Clark, Coach Lee at Vanderbilt, I think that you join that program so you're that much closer to San Antonio Taco Company or Satco here in Nashville than you do if you're going to a winning program. So I think just being close to all the fun in Nashville is the reason to take that program, not because of how you're going to feel on Saturday evenings after your game, because there's going to be a lot of drowning your sorrows on Lower Broad for those coaches in Vanderbilt.
Pedal taverns and bachelorette parties.
Bachelorette parties,
those,
absolutely.
You're in the right city.
Welcome to Nash Vegas, baby. I will kind of do just like you did, go alphabetical down the West, and starting with my team, Bama. Nick Saban took the podium. When was that? I guess that was Wednesday, July the 21st. He got up there, and I did a similar thing. I ranked everything from humor to the outfits to the coach speak or to the filibustering, as you say. And so I'll try to give my rating on all the coaches on all of those activities, including my winners. But for Nick Saban, coach speak, it's weird. Coach Saban falls into this category where he's in his own category for a lot of this stuff. And so for coach speak, he invents some of the stuff, whether it comes from the rat poison or those kinds of things. But coach speak nonetheless, because now we know who Saban is, and we kind of can translate, know ahead of time what he's going to say. So his coach speak, I put it like a 6 out of a scale from 1 to 10. Yes, there was definite coach speak in there, but it was kind of Coach Saban coach speak.
Right.
And so I'm entertained, at least from a Bama fan standpoint. As far as his wardrobe goes, I gave him a 5 across the board. I mean, I'm used to seeing him, especially on some of these game days or when he's talking to the people. If he doesn't have a game going on, he'll wear that pink blazer, which always feels like a flex for somebody of Coach Saban's status to just go out and wear pink, almost hot pink. But he didn't do that here. He had, just a typical kind of light gray suit with the crimson tie. So it's kind of safe. I'm giving him if you're talking about a person who's almost 70 years old, you give him a little bit of a pass, but come on, you got some style. I've seen it in those pink blazers. You can bring it on more than that.
What if he had worn that wide brimmed hat or whatever it is, the old man keep me in the shade hat.
Right.
How would that have affected his wardrobe rating?
Oh, I would have definitely given him a couple of points if he decided to pair that particular wicker looking hat with a suit.
Oh yeah,
that would be something that at least is a talking point. But what he wore is about as safe as you can go there. But I'll give him a 5 just because of it. Okay, so for my humor rating, I want to say this: if they cracked a joke and it created a laugh in the audience, I gave him 3 points. If they said something that was just kind of silly, but they didn't even mean to, and still made the audience laugh, I still give you 2 points for that. So you can earn, you don't even have to make a joke and you still get 2 points. And so like a stand-up comedian, you need a couple of jokes per minute to keep people interested.
Yeah.
Most of these coaches got on stage for about 30 minutes. And in that, there were some of them that didn't have one humorous moment in the entire thing. But if you tried to crack a joke, I still gave you 3 points. And all you have to do is try a decent amount of time with a very favorable audience, and you could get up to a 9 or a 10 pretty easily. Nobody even broke 7 points, I think.
Clark Lee at Vandy should have gotten at least 2 points for saying you didn't come to Vanderbilt for any other reason but to win.
That's true. That's created some long tail laugh effects for Clark Lee's statement. But I'll just say that for Saban, he made one joke, so he gets a 3. So he did not win in that category or the dress category. But I did take the most notes with Coach Saban. I mean, shocking being a huge Bama fan that I would pay attention to my own coach the most. But just a couple of things that he's saying. He gave a commendation to the SEC on how they handled COVID last year. I think he was the only coach that I heard at least kind of give props to how it had been handled on those the organizational level from the SEC. So that was interesting. He said he's also looking forward to that Miami game, neutral site, starting with the Chick-fil-A game. And he said Chick-fil-A game a couple of times, which sounded like he was contractually obligated to say the Chick-fil-A, football kickoff game or something, whatever he said. It's like he had to say that at least 2 or 3 times. But he went into how they develop players and that process that's always talked about around Alabama. That was interesting. That was interesting to hear. I think the most interesting thing that he talked about was talking about coming back to Hoover, being there for media days. And he said, do you guys remember when I think it was one of Miss Terry and I's first years here? We were up on the 7th floor and our boxer dog got out of the room and ended up finding its way to me here on the main floor. So I thought that was interesting that he has a dog that's so tied into Nick Saban that he can find him in a hotel room, a hotel filled with other people that aren't Nick Saban. So the hundreds or the thousands of people that would be in and around that hotel and the Galleria there in Birmingham, the fact that he made it to Coach Saban is either a miracle or some person got him all the way to Saban and then kind of pushed him out in the wings to make it look like a cool, miraculous story. But other than that,
I would have had a follow-up question of, do you still wear the same cologne? And if so, what is that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So a lot of typical what you're going to hear from Nick Saban. We lost a lot of people. We're developing a lot of people. But I feel that for him, as much as he was polite and kind, he was kind of doing his run-of-the-mill thing there. So I'll move on to Arkansas. Sam Pittman, I put at a filibuster rating of 7. He did quite a bit. Like, he was high on the filibuster coach speak rating. But you know what? He looked sharp in his outfit. So I gave him a 7 when it came to his uniform humor. He got a 3. And I think that I may have given him a 3 just so he wouldn't have a 0 on there. You know what, though? Enjoying him talking. I loved how when he got into more details, he talked about it at a certain point. He's like, hey, I'm a big guy. I am who I am. And so he sat down at some point to answer questions where everybody else stood behind the podium there. I thought that was kind of funny. But appreciated him. he said, let's see. Oh, that typical coach speak thing. We got to take it 1 week at a time. I heard that almost with every coach that I'm going over here. But with Arkansas and Sam Pittman, I believe it, because they really need to stay focused if they want to improve their status. Not to mention, if in the next year or two, we welcome Texas and Oklahoma into what we are assuming is going to be the new SEC West, with Alabama and Auburn moving on, Missouri coming back, and Oklahoma and Texas being there. It still kind of looks like the Arkansas is playing from behind, regardless of how the shakeup happened. So looking forward to hearing, I think that the season was better last year than they expected, but it's difficult in the current iteration of the SEC West to make a lot of runs. But moving on from him, we got Brian Harsin over at Auburn, which I was impressed by him. He had a lot of coach speak, probably the highest coach speak that I put at an 8. But, again, being my cross-state rivals and a team that I grew up hating, as a podcast host, I want to at least bring fairness and respect to this all. But I dug what Brian Harsin says. It sounds like the Auburn has a good coach that is ready to, just get to business. And I really appreciated that. He was talking about how the city of Auburn has really welcomed him in. His family's really loving it there. And so I appreciate that. He talked a lot about creating each player's personal best, and even gave a little formula for that, which is discipline, toughness, and conviction, and went into some of those details. So I'm actually sitting there listening to my biggest foe and their head coach, and actually really liking what he said. I've heard and read some articles to the contrary of feeling like that he did a good job, but I'm going to stay where I'm at as a Bama fan, watching Brian Harsin come in to a difficult position and say bravo for what you're doing so far, especially coming from Boise State. I know it's not the same now being in the SEC and being in Auburn. So with that said, I give him an A though, for his efforts. I had to give him only a 3 in the humor department, because I think he at least attempted a joke. They got a smattering of laughs around the room, but he didn't knock it out of the park by any stretch when it comes to that. Let's move on to LSU. On the first day, it looked like on Monday, July 19th, Ed Orgeron came up. He's Coach O, so he's got his own personality, but coming off the season they just had, after having the season before that they just had, it's like, it's almost like you can't win for losing,
right? After
having the season that he had with Joe Burrow and the rest of the LSU Bayou Bengal Tigers. And so he did a lot of coach speak, just saying that, like, we lost a lot, we rebuilt, we did not have what we needed and a good spring to develop our players the way that we needed to. And so he said a lot of stuff that's kind of what you would expect a coach in his position, which is essentially, we're getting back to the basics. We want the teams to do as good as they can do, the individual players to take that responsibility. Even with all the new name, image, and likeness things that they have to deal with, we're going back to the basics. That was like essentially what I took from Coach O. As far as his wardrobe, come on, Coach O. I know you got a little bit of style. He's one that doesn't look like he should have style, and then he does have style, and then he shows up to media days, and he's just kind of wearing a typical coach outfit in a suit with a matching tie. So I couldn't put him up there with props with that, but the state of Mississippi is coming for everybody when it comes to humor and style. So I'll mention that in a second. But essentially, he said that most of his team is vaccinated, which is great. A lot of the teams did a good job, or a lot of the coaches talked about how they're at least over halfway, if not close to 100%. I think that Nick Saban said something to the effect of maybe 90-something%. I can't even find that at this point.
He would have his team there.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody did a good job of saying, with getting the vaccination, it's a personal decision. I mean, we hope that from a competitive analysis that all of our team does do what they need to do to stay safe for themselves. But they didn't go into anything like, come on, players, get your vaccine, or I don't believe in vaccines, stay away. It was a very good coach speak, filibustery kind of, they have to make the right decisions, but we're hoping for the best. And so there was a lot of not real answers, except for every now and then a coach would actually give it, like Coach O saying most of our team is vaccinated is about the best that I heard out of any coach saying about how close they are to being vaccinated. Let's see. And then moving over to Mississippi. Okay, so Coach Leach at Mississippi State, he's not going to get a lot of props for his style. So his uni rating was pretty low. I gave him a 4. Typical dark suit, but he had a matching tie to Starkville and the Bulldogs there. So whatever. He's not known for being necessarily stylish, but I love to hear the guy talk.
I'm just glad he wore a suit.
That's true. Yeah.
I'm expecting him to show up in Hawaiian shirt and flip flops.
Yeah, that's true. Which leads to the fact that the humor rating on him was pretty high. He's great. He always brings some fun little quote bombs there, and this one he seemed to do no differently. He brought a lot of that. I love it. What was it? The fact that he had essentially like an 11-second opener and went straight into questions is totally Mike Leach, and totally wins for the minimum amount of that filibustering that most coaches did. This is who we are. This is what our last season looked like. These are the players that we brought. This is what we're doing to try to do the best we can this year. And with that, I'll take some questions. Some people went on 10 plus minutes for that. I think Brian Harsin at Auburn only got 2 questions out of the audience. The rest of him was just filibustering. So he went a good 25 minutes or so of just talking, if I'm remembering correctly. But Coach Leach did a good job. Talked about specifically with the potential that Mississippi State had, and then with the season that they actually had, that they need to have routine and normalcy. That was the 2 big things that he talked about. Of the fact of last year being not only his first season, but a COVID season. With the season, the schedule got thrown around. No spring practice really threw off their ability to kind of gel as a team. And so he's excited about bringing his air raid offense and really proving that it can work in the SEC, but knowing that they need some routine and some normalcy in order to execute that. I gave him props for saying it how it was.
The air raid Pirates striking again.
Absolutely, yes. And I love that there are certain teams here in the SEC that we don't even call by their real names anymore, because they have earned new names that they especially with all the Tigers that we have. And we've talked about it in previous episodes. If you haven't heard it, if you're new to us, go back and listen to some last season's stuff, because we got some hot takes from 2020. When we're not talking about COVID, we talk about all sorts of stuff, which are re-changing up names that need to have new titles in place. Anyway, wrapping up my SEC West, let's go to Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin kind of, to me, won the coaches from the West talking. I thought Mike Leach did a really good job. I always respect when Coach Saban gets up there. Pittman and Harsin were fun to watch. I will still go on and talk about Jimbo Fisher in just a second. But Lane Kiffin over at Ole Miss, he continues to delight me, even though he had to do a lot to repair his reputation in my brain, because I saw the potential that he had at Tennessee and what happened there years ago. I guess it's been now 12 years since all that went down, which seems ridiculous that it's been that long. Time flies. But anyway, I love him, whether it's his tweets or when he's behind a microphone. He just says some cool stuff. I give him I was going to give him props for outfit. And I, you know what, I'm going to go give it to him. I'm giving him the Uni Award for the coaches on the West. I thought he had a good colorway going. I thought he had even good hair. Like, you're not going to say that for a lot of coaches at that level that pay attention to their hair, but he actually put some product in it. So I'm giving him some props. Props for the product, and also humor. He knocked it out of the park. He said several things that made me laugh. Obviously made the good audience there laugh. If you're sitting in an audience listening to a bunch of coaches, you're going to laugh at stuff that you wouldn't laugh at if you were at a comedy club, but
True. Because
they're trying so hard. But Lane Kiffin, he can bring the goods. He's got a good personality and can do that. But he was asked at one point, of all the SEC teams, which quarterback would be your starter? And it seems like a typical thing for a coach to say, well, my quarterback. But I think that he was actually speaking honest there, because he was talking about some ways in which Matt Corral at QB can improve, but that he still thinks that he is statistically the best quarterback in the SEC right now, which I can't really argue with him. Between he and who is it? JT over in Georgia.
JT
I think
Daniels,
those are those are the two quarterbacks. At one point I thought it was funny. He was told Bryce Young, currently the quarterback, the presumed starter quarterback at Alabama, is nearing $1 million in NIL image and likeness deals at this point. And when he was told that from one of the reporters in the audience, he was blown away. And then like 2 or 3 questions later, he stopped and was like, "Are you serious? This guy has really made this much and he hasn't even played a game?" And so it was just funny to see that, like, he couldn't even think about the questions that were being asked
Right.
because he was overwhelmed with the idea that one of the rival quarterbacks had already made almost $1 million in deals. And then he said, well, if he's already making $1 million, Bryce Young doesn't need to play us when we play Alabama here. We'll let somebody else play. He's already good. He's already set. So I thought that was kind of fun too. And then somebody else was asking him that he needed to, he said at some point in the interview that he was trying to improve his physique so he's better at playing golf or something like that with a couple of the coaches. And he was like, yeah, I just got to lose some pounds because I'm eating all this delicious Mississippi food being here at Ole Miss. And then some reporter asked him what his weight loss strategy was. And his response was, strange question to ask another guy, but anyway. And then he went on to explain it. So I thought that even there, he was cracking on the reporter for asking such a question. So he wins my style and my humor award.
Right.
But between him and Leach over at Mississippi State, I love Mississippi football right now.
Right. It's just awesome.
It's awesome. You got 2 guys that can kind of care less if they stick their foot in their mouth. They've been around the block enough to feel comfortable in that position. And I love how when it comes to like Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin, you may get some coach speak because it's mandated to a degree, but far less than your percentage wise than all the other coaches in the SEC. So anywho, for what it's worth, love you, Lane. I'm glad that you're back in the SEC. And it looks like the Ole Miss has the potential to continue to improve over time. It's unfortunate that they are improving in the same division as Alabama and improving in the same division as LSU, and now Texas A&M, who is the right now I think the preseason assumed to come in second place in the SEC. So it's tough times for teams over in Mississippi, but gotta love Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin. Rounding out Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher. He was there on Wednesday on the 21st of July. I gave him 5 for coach speak. He does quite a bit of that. Sometimes, like Jimbo Fisher is my SEC West coach, kind of like what's Dan Mullen at Florida for you. He has made me angry in the past. I've not liked his coaching style. I've not liked his leadership ability. But there's something about, though, when he is just on the microphone, I can't help but to like the guy or to respect the guy. So he has made me angry, and to the point of not even understanding years ago at Florida State if he was actually in charge as the head coach of the Seminoles, or if it was Jameis Winston who was actually in charge of the Florida State Seminoles. But some of that kind of stuff is now dissipating since it's so far out in the distance in our past. But looking at him as the Texas A&M head coach, again, I think that he's got a lot of potential this year. But again, playing in the same division as Alabama and LSU, it's going to be difficult year in and year out to try to really take that top spot. His wardrobe, I probably gave him the least. It looked like he forgot that he was supposed to wear a suit. Remembered that he was at the Galleria there in Birmingham and had one of his handlers go and buy him an off-the-rack suit at just a local place there at the mall right before he went on stage. His humor.
That reminds me of Home Improvement when Tim, the Toolman Taylor, wears the suit in a bag. You know, it's supposed to collapse down like. In fact, I've got a rain jacket that does that. But you know, just packs down real small, and he pulls it out, and it's all wrinkly, and he can't get the wrinkles out to save his life.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I could do for another round of watching Home Improvement, just starting at the beginning and watching all the way through and binging that, because I love that show back in the day.
Yeah.
You know what? What the thing that I really enjoyed about Jimbo Fisher's presser was how glowingly he talked about Bobby Bowden. It was recently announced that Bobby Bowden was diagnosed with terminal, I think it's pancreatic cancer. And so several of the coaches that I heard talk specifically mentioned Bobby Bowden, but Jimbo Fisher has a history with the Bowdens that go back almost 40 years at this point. I think that he was a player at Samford when one of, I think it was Tommy Bowden, or I think it was Tommy or Terry, coached at Samford, not too far from where they were having SEC Media Days there in Hoover.
Yeah.
Samford's a Birmingham university. But going all the way back then of, staying at Coach Bowden's house way back in the day. So he's got a lot of history. I love that he kind of, said everybody to keep him in your prayers and to think about him, but just kind of had a glowing report of what kind of a man and coach Coach Bowden was. So I appreciated that. Also, he was asked at some point about his fourth season at Florida State, which is when he won the national championship with Jameis Winston under center. And now he's in his fourth season at Texas A&M, and talking about some comparisons. And there actually are several comparisons that he could make that made him excited about this year's team when comparing him to that national championship team from several years ago. So a lot, though, a lot of interesting stuff, a lot more detail that you and I are going to go into depth about with each of these coaches and each of these teams around the SEC Media Days. But for a brief overhaul to the whole SEC, you did a great job with the East. I did my best with the West. And now we're going to dive into some more because here in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure that you were going to announce it here in a second, but we're going to be focusing on one team each day for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So I'll be taking the East. Chris will be taking the West. And what we're going to do is just talk about maybe some other things that the coaches said and a little bit of what the players said at SEC Media Days, looking out onto the 2021 season. So each day for the next 3 weeks, we got 14 teams. We got 15 days in the next 3 weeks. There will be something every day from us. We'll just go back and forth between the East and the West pretty much. Hey, here's what we thought of this team. Here's what we thought of this team. So it'll be available on your podcast apps. It'll be available on YouTube as videos. Find us wherever you want to consume this content. For the next 3 weeks, we're just going to be breaking down the SEC Media Days. They're not going to be long, 5, 6, 7 minutes tops, probably. We'll see how much we have to say. So be sure to follow along there. If you want to know where you can find it, just go to thirdsaturdayin.october.com, because you can find links to our show. You can find links to all of our social media. You can get our tailgating tips there as well. There may be some recipes in there. Maybe we need to come up with some new recipes for 2021.
Absolutely.
But you can find all of that over on thirdsaturdayin.october.com. Really excited for this season. Let us know what you thought about your coach. Just reach out to us on social media. You can get in touch with us there or on our website. I don't know. I'm still giddy. I love every minute of it.
Oh my gosh, me too.
I haven't watched any of the West Media Days. After hearing your reports, I'm going to have to go back, especially the state of Mississippi. I got to go see what's happening in Mississippi. So, Chris, let's go. Let's
do it, man.
I wish the season kicked off today. Wouldn't that be awesome?
We've got a good 6 weeks before the season officially kicks off. But for me and my money, it always really begins in July for SEC Media Days. And so I'm so glad that those are now in the books and behind us, because that means that we can just prep and just finesse a few things between now and September 4th when most of these teams in the SEC kick off for the first time. So I'm so pumped, and let's do this.
Well, and I'm excited to say, for the first time for the 2021 season, roll balls.
Roll balls, baby.